I will call the April 26th, 2022 special meeting of the Everett Public School Board of Directors to order. Will the secretary please read the roll?
President Lassane.
Present.
Vice President Mitchell. Director Nichols.
Present.
Director Mason.
Present.
Director Burton. Present.
Thank you. Our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Salzman, would you introduce the agenda?
This afternoon's agenda contains an executive session, then the final strategic plan update, and an interactive flat panel demonstration.
Can I ask a clarification on that? I thought we were doing 3, 3, 3. We only have 2 tonight. I thought it's typically been 3. What?
It has been just because we thought we were over time with the flat panel would be another one.
Okay.
We don't want to keep it short. This is a flat panel.
Okay.
It's just items B2C and F2B, correct? Fantastic. Okay.
The flat panel will be interactive.
And the flat panel demonstration. If all directors are in agreement, the agenda will be approved by general consent. Very well. At this point in time, we will recess for an executive session, and we should be back here by 5 o'clock, correct? Thank you very much, Jared. We will now recess. We will need 10 more minutes in executive session, so we will stay on recess for 10 more minutes. Thank you. Stop recording. We will call the meeting back to order. We will now move to our work study session, strategic progress monitoring session 4. I should put my glasses on. Strategic initiative updates.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am happy to facilitate this board study session. This is the 4th of 4 board study sessions this year focused on strategic initiatives, and this completes our series. However, there is one additional board presentation that will occur at a regular board meeting on June 14th. It's Initiative F1A. We needed a little bit more time to get ready for the board presentation. We also have added another component to this meeting tonight, so we wanted to fit it in on the time frame. So these sessions are set up intentionally to provide the board an opportunity to monitor the work of the district on these strategic initiatives from a tactical level, and also have an opportunity to talk about the operational and strategic implications of this work. Last month on March 15th, you heard a discussion and engaged in conversation around establishing district-wide expectations for instructional time master schedules and course offerings, and securing parent and community support, and increasing transparency and family engagement. Tonight, we have two strategic initiatives. The first one is focused on the area of human capital, and Rondi Seberg will be leading that. And then we also have a session that is led by two individuals, Drs. Woods and Matthews, and they will be presenting on an initiative that is focused on effective instructional practices. So with that, and without further ado, I'll ask Rondi to start her presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Pleasure to be here with you this evening to talk about the strategic initiative. My initiative that I'm speaking with you this evening about is about an inclusive work environment that promotes wellness. You're going to hear that word a lot when I'm talking wellness. A sense of belonging, engagement, and support. So this initiative is initiative F2B. It reads that it's ensuring an inclusive work environment that promotes wellness, a sense of belonging, engagement, and support. The objective is to promote a culture of learning and well-being for each employee group or all of our employees. And as Mike said, it's under the strategic theme of human capital recruitment. My name is Rondi Seberg. I'm one of the directors in human resources, and it's my pleasure to get to present this to you today. But first, we're going to take a wellness moment, because this is a wellness presentation. So just briefly here, and Jared taught me how to use this, hopefully it'll work. I'm going to take a moment and breathe. That seems like a funny thing, but we're going to just take a few moments. We're not going to do this for 10 minutes, but just a few moments. So when you see this shape appear on the screen, just a good opportunity to kind of center ourselves before we do our next activity, which is a little bit of a visioning activity. In a moment, I'm going to have you on your feet doing a little activity with some posters behind us. But I want to talk first about the purpose of this activity. So in Everett Public Schools, we have a diverse range of employees. They have varying work schedules, varying interests, varying abilities, and varying interests in how they might engage in wellness, workplace wellness. So later in this presentation, I'm going to be sharing with you the results of an employee wellness survey that we conducted, and I'm looking forward to sharing those results with you. But before we do that, I want to facilitate a short activity with you. So this activity is designed to get you thinking about what employee wellness might look like for each one of our employees. So I've created some sample employees. Okay, sample employees, their work location and work hours, those are listed on the 3 posters behind you against the far wall. And your task or an outcome of this activity is to think about or vision what wellness might look like for these individuals. What it sounds like experience is like for them. The learning target of this activity is really for us to consider the complexity of workplace wellness in a school district like ours with such a diverse employee group. So your input today, along with other elements that we've been working on, which I'll share, will help craft wellness programming for our employees. So you have sticky notes at your spots. What I'm going to ask you to do here in just a moment is to think about what wellness looks like for these individuals. So I'm going to make my way back here because I have some ideas of how we might start here. Okay. So we have three individuals here. We have Linda, who's an elementary teacher. Linda works from 8:25 in the morning till 3:55 in the afternoon. That's for regular work hours. Then we have Carol. She's a high school special education paraeducator. Carol works from 7:30 in the morning to 2:15. And then we have Oscar, who is a swing shift custodian. Oscar works from 2:30 in the afternoon to 10:30 p.m. So when we're thinking about, these are very different types of employees, different schedules, different duties. What might they be interested when you think about wellness? Well, Oscar, for example, he might be interested in a financial wellness course. He's interested in building his portfolio, would like some information and some training and some courses on financial wellness. So I'm going to put my sticky note there. That's an idea I have that might be of interest to Oscar. And then Linda, our elementary teacher, she might be interested in an on-site walking program after school. That's an activity that maybe is something that she might like, that the wellness program could facilitate for her. So I'm going to invite you to grab your sticky notes that are at your spots, grab a pen, make your way to one of these posters. And I'll just give a few minutes for this, and I want you to just be thinking, what does an employee wellness program look like for Oscar, Carol, and Linda? Come on.
I don't even really understand what you're talking about when you say wellness.
Oh,
Like,
great. Well,
when
how
you
about I
start
explain
talking
that
about
first?
financial, I think of wellness as physical health.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
when you start talking about financial planning, I'm kind of like, oh, what am I missing?
I'm happy to talk about that. So wellness really can be, I mean, it's a really broad definition. I think very traditionally we think about wellness as a walking program after school, or going to the gym, or maybe a healthy eating class. But in recent years, in some of the research we've done, wellness can really expand to the well-being of an individual in all parts of their lives. So maybe they're very physically fit and they eat really well, but they have a lot of financial stress. And so learning maybe some skills and tools how to manage their financial wellness, which is a term I guess now, that might help them feel a little bit more balanced in their life, be able to maybe focus more on their work or their family, things like that. So yeah, did that help?
My question when I start thinking about an employee wellness is, and wellness while they're on the job.
Yes.
Not, the after-school program or walking program might be great, but Linda may want to ensure that she has adequate time to have lunch while she's at work, breaks throughout the day, so she's not always constantly on her feet, or things like that. Or maybe she wants to be more on her feet during the day, and that's why she wants a walking program. So when we're looking at wellness, is it while they're in their office period, their office time, not before or after, but that's how I look at wellness.
For sure, wellness, I mean, we want to look at how we can incorporate wellness and wellness activities, how their days can be structured, to your point, with breaks, opportunities to kind of just reset, engage. But it also could be programming that helps them access well-being activities. For example, discounts at one of our partners, the YMCA. So they work all day, but then they're able to go to the YMCA that evening and participate in an exercise class or go walk on the treadmill for a while. So I think when I think about workplace wellness, it's certainly during the workday for the employee, but it's also helping them access well-being and wellness programs or programming in the community. So a couple minutes, think of some ideas of how wellness, or what wellness in all of its definitions might look like for Linda, our elementary teacher, Carol, our high school special education paraeducator, and Oscar, our swing shift custodian. It gives about 3 minutes to do this.
Do we have to have just one or more than one?
As many as you'd like. I think I'll read off a couple of these. So some of you wrote for Linda, who's a member as our elementary teacher, that it might be really stressful for her being on her feet all day. and what kind of programming could we provide to assist with that? Options for plant-based meals for lunch, healthy eating opportunities, healthy cooking classes, for example, good ideas. For Carol, she's our high school special education paraeducator. She may really need some opportunities to develop physical strength, which may assist her in her job. She's working with high school students. And an opportunity to have less isolation from peers. Some, socialization, social opportunities can be wellness as well. And then for Oscar, our swing shift custodian, 24-hour daycare access. So helping get him and his family access so when he's coming to school at kind of non-traditional work hours, that there's opportunities for care for his children. How to manage sleeping during the day, and then having the opportunity to work different schedules which might align with his family schedules. So great, thank you for those ideas. And part of defining wellness is there's no single definition about it, right? So we're working on defining it as we go through this process. I appreciate your interaction and your help with that. Thank you. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what has been done so far in this strategic initiative. We do have a wellness committee. This committee has 9 members. It's a multidisciplinary committee. They represent 6 different employee groups, and these individuals work both at our schools and in our central office locations. We intentionally chose a diverse group of employees from a variety of walks of life, kind of reflected against the posters in the back. We meet once a month. This committee's charge is to develop and implement innovative wellness program for all of our employees. We have a vision statement, which I'll show to you in just a moment. This vision statement has been crafted over several meetings with a varieties of input, and I'll talk to that in a moment. And then, as I referred to just a little while ago, we have our survey, which really gave us some amazing data from our employees. I'm happy to share that with you in just a minute. A couple more milestones and timelines. One of our high-level milestones is the Smart Health Wellness Promotion Program, and I'll talk again about that in just a minute. And then finally, the School Board Policy 5515, which is the Workforce Secondary Traumatic Stress. Thank you. You adopted this policy in October of 21, and I'll be talking a little bit more about how that school board policy is going to help inform some of our wellness programming as well. So this is our vision statement, which was created by our both our initiative action team and our wellness committee. I'll just give you a moment to look at that. So you'll see some words resurfacing there about inclusive work environment, integration of wellness, sense of belonging and opportunities for our individuals. I'd like to share some of the things that have happened so far. This is our first year in this strategic initiative. The screenshot on the left is a screenshot of one of the communications that we send to all of our employees. We have a monthly communication that goes out at the end of the month on payday. We call it our HR payroll monthly message. Lots of information in there. And this is an opportunity for us to communicate to all of our entire employee group. So this was a communication that went out about the Smart Health program, which I will talk about in just a second. Additionally, you can see that nurse there. We held a flu shot clinic in October. We had 221 flu shots administered in one day. It was quite the production. And I'll talk about this in a second. With our survey, we definitely heard from our employees, please have another flu shot clinic. We want that at work. Thank you. So now I'm going to get into the survey. So as I noted before, we ran this survey. We sent it to every single one of our employees, and that count at that moment was 2,560 employees. And we had about, a little less than half, 1,086 employees completed this survey. About 43% of our employees responded. We asked them a variety of questions. We asked, are you certificated or classified? Where do you work? And if you work in multiple locations, what are those locations? What are your wellness topics of interest? What is your interest in engagement? If we have a wellness programming that comes to your school, is that something that you might participate in? And what type of engagement are you interested in? Are you interested in group opportunities, or are you interested in more individual opportunities? How do you prefer to be communicated? Do you want to get another email, or would you prefer that this is communicated in a staff meeting or in other communications? We also wanted to know, to be respectful of our employees with a variety of schedules, what time of day works for you to participate in activities, and how long, what's the duration that you might want to participate in? And finally, we asked what barriers might be in place for you that you could foresee a barrier to participation. So some of our data. The table on the left is the interest level. You can see it's about in the mid-range. People said, I would probably participate in some wellness activity. Trending towards the fives, yes, I'm very interested, I will participate. The table on the right is about the barriers. We asked what barriers might prevent you from participating in wellness activities at work. And time was the big issue. Inconvenient time of day, or the location of the offering, perhaps if it wasn't at their work site, if it was at another location, and then lack of time. Just they're feeling really busy, lack of time. They told us also that the best times to participate in activities were either after work or at lunchtime. So we don't have any early birds. Further, we asked, and this kind of connects into the sticky note activity that we just did. You gave ideas of what wellness programming might look like for some of our employees. We asked our employees the same thing. Some clear messages came across when those employees shared back with us. The top 5 topics of interest: number 1, emotional well-being. Number 2, stress management, then followed by physical activity, nutrition and healthy eating, and then preventative health. There's that flu shot clip, the preventative health. So the data that these employees gave us, in addition to the data that you've given us and run this activity with Cabinet as well, all of this information will help our wellness committee as we design programming going forward. And we will continue to ask and survey employees on an annual basis, what's working well, what's not working well, what else would you like to see? Employees really gave us some great input through this process. Appreciative of the time they spent. So I mentioned Smart Health. Smart Health is one of the performance measures that I'll be using looking at the effectiveness of this strategic initiative. Smart Health is it's run by the Washington Healthcare Authority. This year, the Washington Healthcare Authority, as you may know, oversees health benefits for employees in school districts. It's called the School Employee Benefits Board, or SEB for short. But Smart Health is a portion of that program. So this year, employees can earn up to $125 off their medical plan deductible by completing a well-being assessment and participating in well-being activities. This is kind of like an online wellness program, if you will. So there were activities such as 10 ways to love your brain, I did that one. Number 1, get good sleep. Number 2, hydrate. Tracking your water intake. I guess I gotta make sure I count this one. 150 minutes of movement a week, things like that. Activities that individuals can participate in. If they hit a certain number of points, then they can earn $125 off their medical plan deductible. Pretty slick. When you see your deductible for the doctor, you get your explanation of benefits, you can see that $125 taken off. So that's a great savings for our employees. So last year we ran this, we had 556 participants, which was about 22% of the eligible employees. To be eligible for this $125, an employee must be enrolled in a medical plan through SEB. Everybody can participate. Every employee can participate in this. They don't have to be enrolled in SEB, but to get that $125 incentive, they do have to be enrolled. So last year we had 556 participants. This year we have 555, and we are continuing to get more and more as we go forward. Lots more opportunities. We're also pretty early in the year, right? It's only April. The measurement from last year was December. So it's lots of opportunities to promote this. I think about these things in the morning. How can I get more employees to basically earn that $125, but also take some bonus options as they go forward. So this is one of our performance measures. The other measures, we have our wellness committee established. That's done. We've defined our vision statement. Done. What's next? So next year, the number of staff wellness events, that's going to be a big metric that we're going to count. Open enrollment events, when we're going through open enrollment for benefits, we want to count those as some wellness opportunities. I'm looking at any way that I can infuse wellness into activities that are already happening for our employees. Flu shot clinics, we talked about that. And then just the overall wellness program activity engagement. Our strategic initiative, the way I look at it, is to promote that culture of learning and well-being for each employee group. We're underway towards that objective. So next steps. This year we've been prioritizing our needs, creating our priorities and those actions. Our team committee has identified and researched successful school district wellness programs as an idea to get, what are other school districts doing? Not only Washington, but nationwide. And then for year 2, some of our next steps there are looking at soliciting community partnerships. I mentioned the YMCA, for example. They are a wonderful partnership to us in many ways, and we're looking to continue that with our wellness. The website that we will be launching. This website is really going to be a kind of a one-stop shop for our employees, where they can access everything from how do I get that discount at the YMCA to what resources might you have for stress management, things like that. And then really when it comes to the workforce secondary traumatic stress, I mentioned that before, School Board Policy 5515, that wellness, our wellness site is really going to be the place where the information is housed for that. So under this School Board Policy, the workforce secondary traumatic stress, we want to make sure that we give stress management resources for our employees, mental health resources, supports through OSPI, through the Educational School Service District, through SEB, this School Employees Benefits Board, and then also links to secondary traumatic stress self-assessment tools and associated resources. We'll continue as we go forward and we launch the wellness program to look at other innovative ways for wellness programming, both within the workday and outside of the workday. The work that is being led and with such an amazing engaged wellness committee. These folks are really, really committed to wellness. One of our wellness committee members had to miss our last meeting because she was running the Boston Marathon. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, and we had to kind of check her status along the way. So here we are talking, she's on like mile 24. So very committed to wellness. So I'm pleased to have that committee that's helping move this work, which is all of our work forward. So I'm happy to, any questions that you might have, I'm happy to answer any of those or have discussion. Thank you.
Any questions for? I have one question.
Sure.
I understand that at one point in time there was a basketball challenge. Was that covered under the wellness program?
No, are you talking about a staff versus students? I've
Or-
heard of this mythical event, but no, that was not through staff wellness. I think that might be something that was a historic game that, or about it at Everett High School. Dr. Lancaster's shaking his head.
But it involved, I believe, some staff people, right?
Well, staff versus students.
It was staff versus students, and
Still goes on.
it still goes on. And it's not part of the wellness program.
It's just one game.
Oh, it was just one game?
Yeah.
Oh, so it isn't an ongoing
No,
challenge?
it's just an event. It's a
Oh,
challenge.
that's too bad.
The students are challenging the staff. I can
Sally was
guarantee
the
you
point
that.
guard in 2002.
Oh, she was?
Yeah, they told me.
It's a challenge to keep adults healthy.
It's definitely a challenge.
Right, we don't want any injuries from
Right,
that.
that's Well, I don't have a question, but I wanted to address that first question there. What effects will this work have on achieving our strategic objectives? I have had the good fortune to work for a company that was very into employee wellness, and it creates an impact much bigger than the activities themselves to work for an organization that essentially cares for their employees. And so, you know, you might struggle with participation because people are busy and timing and some of those things, but the fact that it's being thought about and it's being thought about to care for our employees, I think speaks volumes, regardless of kind of how it all rolls out. Thank you.
I would agree with that, because
And
I once
alignment with
worked
what we're
for-
doing with students too.
I once worked for an organization who valued wellness quite a bit, and lots of challenges during the time that you were at work as well as off work. And it showed how much they valued wellness. Even though they took care of everything, you know, even if there were injuries, they took care of those as well, but still, it does show that they are very much involved, as Director Mason mentioned.
That is certainly
Goes
one
a
of my
long way.
goals. And I heard that actually in the survey, there were fillable fields that staff could write narratives in. And over, folks said, thank you. Thank you for even asking me this question. And also thank you for thinking about this, not only for myself, but for my colleagues and for our organization. So I think there's a lot of interest from our employees and also a deep sense of appreciation that we recognize that these are some supports that they need.
It's interesting because we talk about, you know, when students aren't healthy, you know, they don't have good wellness, whether it's social, emotional, they can't learn. And the same is true for our staff, you know, they're not going to be their best, whether they're a teacher, whatever their role is.
Is there any talk about, you know, flexible time off or doing things that will earn you like an hour or two off, you know, like doing the food drive, things like that? Because that tends to be so much over more motivation than money.
I can say that Dr. Golden.
One thing we're currently working on is offering for our full year employees an annual wellness day, encouraging them to go get all the checkups and appointments, so they can take the day to do that. And looking at a variety of schedules like our 410s through the summer. So,
And to that same end, are we looking at adding more floaters to different departments so that we can support those days off and personal days?
that's something we can, you know, in reflection of our substitute floaters and others.
Yeah.
Thinking about different opportunities.
The only other suggestions, I'm sure your committee is probably already talking about these things, is that one of the things, there's a couple of physical activities that are easily accessible, you know, regardless of mobility issues, disability, things like that. And that's stuff like Tai Chi, yoga. And if they're looking for stuff to do during lunch breaks or immediately after school, perhaps the district needs to invest in some sort of RFP for providers to like rotate the schools throughout the month, providing those services, and then some sort of campaign like a small acts of wellness campaign, right, where, you know, make sure you're taking 2 minutes a day to do this and kind of that type of stuff. So that's it.
thinking the same thing about having folks come in and do those trainings, but I know a lot of our parents have those certifications and they're all kind of looking for ways to volunteer. And so one of the schools, actually not in this, in a different one, but the parents actually took that on, right? And they said, hey, if you've got your 200-hour yoga certification, or if you've got whatever, the gym is available, and you would have teachers, you would have certs or different like paras come in. You would also have other parents come in during that time, and it became kind of a community space, but you still had a licensed, bonded, insured instructor that happened to be a parent in the community that you weren't paying. So.
I love the idea of integrating the parents into that. Yeah.
There's one other thing, we were a very big resource to our community when we had clinics, vaccinations on site at our school. And parents as well as employees could take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah.
Having flu clinics on site is another opportunity, but there's so many more. You can do screening for like diabetes on campus, during a certain time. You can do, mammograms for, they have the mobile mammogram carts come through, and they can provide those services as well. You have screenings for all kinds of things, that people can take advantage of while they're here at work, so they don't have to then go out and look for it. And then open it up to our community as well, so that it is a resource, another resource for them too, closer to the schools that they live near. So those are opportunities by partnering with our community, partnering with our families, and also providing a resource to our staff. That's our biggest resource available to us.
Thanks for the great idea. It's been a pleasure talking to you this evening. It's my opportunity now to introduce Dr. Kathy Woods and Dr. Catherine Matthews for their strategic initiative.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Dr. Matthews is actually out in Zoom land, and so you'll be hearing the voice of assessment coming all around you. So I'm happy to have her, and I think she's going to start our presentation today.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening. Dr. Kathy Woods and I hear some feedback. Jared, are we okay? All right. Dr. Kathy Woods and I will be sharing our work on initiative B2C, which is establishing consistent grading and assessment practices across all schools and grade levels to reflect student learning that indicates mastery. For our initiative, our sponsor is Dr. Shelley Boughton, and our initiative is under strategic theme B, effective instructional practices, and the strategic objective B2, establishing personalized learning opportunities for all students. We would like to start today by grounding you in the work through our own individual experience. We have all had the experience of being graded, and I'd like you to take just a few moments to think of your experience as a student and of being graded. At that time, what did you think that the purpose of a teacher giving you a grade was? So I want to give you just a moment to get your thoughts together and then ask you to take a few seconds to share one belief that you had about being graded as a student.
So Dr. Matthews can't see you, so you can go ahead and speak out, or love to hear what you thought the purpose of that teacher giving you a grade was at the time.
I'll start. In some cases, motivating. In some cases, embarrassing.
That's really, I think, very teacher dependent too. Sometimes it was motivation, other times it was, to say you got it, depending on what kind of grade you got. Yeah, there was just such a variety. I'm having a hard time just kind of summarizing
I always thought of it as a game, that it was just a game to figure out, to let them do what I think they wanted to get the grade I wanted. But it wasn't about learning, it was more about just figuring out what they wanted to see and then just regurgitating it and wrote back to them.
Yeah, it always felt like some score that I was keeping for some far off, goal of going to college, which once I gave up on, really stopped having so much weight over my education, and I actually enjoyed it. So.
So back that once I figured out the game, I finished high school in 3 years because I was like, it wasn't about the learning, it was about who plays the game quickest and best.
So I think that you're illustrating some of the challenges with grading that you're going to learn about in this presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathy for the next part.
So we're going to engage you in another little activity. If you can log on either on your phone or on your computer to this website, it's POLLEB.com, and then / Kathy Woods 400. Had this account forever, I don't know why it's that number. POLLEB.com, Kathy Woods 400. And you see you see 6 different possible purposes for grading. And when you log in, should have the ability to rate those in order to put one at the top and one at the bottom. And what do you think is the purpose of grading now? Or should be the purpose of grading now? You told us what your experiences were when you were in school and being graded. And we did this activity with Cabinet earlier too, and there were some similar experiences of game playing and figuring out what the teacher wanted. And seeing if, did I get it or did I not get it? So if you can do that, it should populate up here.
Can you repeat that again?
Pardon?
Can you repeat that
Yep,
again?
it should be at the top of the screen too. POLLEB.com, and then the / Kathy Woods 400. And it will give you these 6 different potential purposes of grading. But the one that you think is most important at the top. And then when you get done with that, you hit submit, and then it'll start populating up here, and you'll be able to see it in real time.
So you just select one, right?
You should be able to rank order them, so you can slide one to the top.
Oh,
I
okay,
see.
I got you.
Okay.
And rate all 6 of them in place. So you can see where you put them.
Sorry, what does it say, how grading should be, or how?
How should be?
How it should be?
What do you think the true purpose of grading
What
is?
should it, okay, got it.
Yeah, you can put it in order by hitting the up or down arrow. Click on that. So we're starting to get some responses. So as people are kind of finishing that up, you can see how you, as a board, have created the purpose of grading. And I just want to say some of these potential purposes of grading are inappropriate purposes of grading, right? So to provide evidence of students' lack of effort or inappropriate responsibility is not what we should be using grades for. But there are other things in here that we say, well, that is a potential purpose. What I want to propose here, and Dr. Matthews and I have been working on this for a while with our team, is really there is one purpose of grading, and that is to communicate student progress toward mastery of standard. Some of the other things in here, like to inform instructional decisions and to provide information that students can use for self-evaluation, are very appropriate uses of assessment and feedback.
Do we get an A since we got it?
You got it. You are an A. So providing information that students can use for self-evaluation is a really good use of assessment and feedback. But the grade should really inform us about the student progress or mastery of standards on the course standards, agreed upon standards. So we give feedback and we assess a lot of things that should never go into the grade. When I was a teacher in the classroom, I assessed and gave feedback to my students on their promptness to class. That never went into a grade, right? But it is feedback I gave my students, or on, you know, their behavior or whatever the thing was, that should never go into a grade. But we also do a lot of assessment, and I think back to the presentation on innovation when Director Nichols said, if we want to have a place where innovation is, where we value innovation, we need to change our grading practices, because students need opportunities to make mistakes without it going into the grade book. Right? So I just very much appreciate that. So I'm going to go.
My question, and this, that particular purpose of grading, if you're in a classroom in which you know all the kids are going to master the standards, then what do you use the grading tool for?
So you know that, ask me that, you know that all the kids are going to meet
master the standards.
And they haven't mastered the standards yet, right?
Yeah, but there are certain classes that you know, you've got a class where all the kids are your A students, say, for example, you know they're going to master the standards. The question is, what then is grading for?
I think the answer is the same as if you had a class with a variety of grades. It's to demonstrate that they did master the standards. And I think the question is whether or not all students can earn an A in a class. And I think that you'll see in the data that we're about to show you that that's a really fundamental question. So, Kathy, can you bring up the grading slide? Let me just show you some data around to your point. Grading is very much an equity issue. Are you
on the right, we're on the right slide, are we good?
I'm not seeing a slide at all.
Maybe we stop sharing.
All right. So grading is an equity issue. And to illustrate that point, we're going to look at the first semester middle school grades for all courses this year. In the top chart, sorry. In the top chart, the darker color green indicates a greater percentage of students in each grade band. So in the first column, you see the course grade bands from A through F, and then in the bottom row, enrollment as a percentage of the row across. In the other columns, you see the federal race or ethnicity group. So the numbers in each cell represent the percentage of each grade band by race or ethnic group. For example, 0.6% of Cs were awarded to American Indian or Alaska Native students. If we look at their enrollment as a percentage of all students in the grade, it's 4% of all students. So we would say that it is close to being proportional, but it's slightly above. The percentage of C's is slightly above proportional. But notice that only 2% of A's went to this students in this group. So it's disproportionately low, while 1.1% of F's were awarded to American Indian or Alaska Native students, which is disproportionately high. And the reverse is true if we were to look at our Asian students. 17.9% of students are Asian in this population, but 26.8% of the A's were awarded to Asian students, and only 3.4% of the F's were awarded to Asian students. Now, a helpful way for us to look at this is by looking at the ratio of course grades to enrollment in just a single number, and that's what you're seeing in the lower chart. It's the same data, but it's looking at it from a different perspective. The colors from blue to red represent the grades from A to F. So A's are in blue, F's are in red. The darkness of the color represents the magnitude of the number. And our ideal here would be a 1.0. And that would mean that the student group is represented in any grade band at the same rate that they are in the population. So if you look across to the far right, you see for our white students that this is the case. It's 1.0. 43.9% of students are white, 43.4% of students get A's. If you look at our American Indian or Alaska Native students, you see that they are underrepresented in the A's at 0.6, and they are overrepresented in F's at 2.7. Remember, 1.0 is ideal here. And we can see, for example, the example of our Asian students, they are overrepresented in A's at 1.5 and underrepresented in F's at 0.2. Now, we don't want anyone to get an F, so our goal here is not to have a perfect ratio of failing grades. But the point is that the distribution really should show some sort of logical probability. And when it shows this pattern, it raises the question of equity.
So we want to make sure that our grades are equitable and demonstrate equity in our work. We also want to make sure that our grades are meaningful. So I am going to talk to you about two fictitious students in a fictitious class. We'll call it Mr. Jones' class. And note that sometimes our grading systems, while they may be very well-meaning, they actually create problems and make it less meaningful. So let's look at two students, Tangela and Isabel. And what you're going to see here is they each have a 76%. At the end of the day here, they both earned C's. However, what you might also see is that Tangela scored 60% on the assessments, the tests and projects, those things that are aligned with the course standards, while Isabel earned a 95%. So what that means is the grade of C isn't really meaningful. For Tangela, the system is unfair because if we assume that Mr. Jones's assessments are aligned with standards, the grade hides the fact that Tangela might need more intervention. She might need reteaching. She's not making progress towards standard. On the other hand, for Isabel, it hides the fact that indeed she is making great strides towards standard. And so her grade is also a C. We look at it a slightly different way, and let's put Tangela, the first student who had a 60% on her assessments, let's put her in Mr. Jones's class as she was, or Ms. Lopez's class. And when she's in, and still she has the same grades in each of those, but the weighting is different. And so in Mr. Jones's class, she earns a 76% of C. But in Ms. Lopez's class, the grade is more connected with her assessment scores. And so it looks like we might be able to see that she's struggling with the learning, right? And the real difference here is that 85% of the grade is based on assessments. Similarly, if we put Isabel into a class, compared Mr. Jones's class with Miss Lopez's class, where she earned 95% on the assessments. In Miss Lopez's class, she earns a 91%, like an A-, which is much more closely aligned with how she's doing on the assessments. And again, it's simply that the category of assessments, which should be aligned with the standards, is weighted more heavily. And of course, we can argue, and I think both Catherine and I would, that things like participation, homework, and class activities should maybe not be a part of the grade at all. But at least here in Ms. Lopez's class, the vast majority of the grade is based on the assessments. And you can see, and some of you have probably experienced because you've had kids in our system, that a student can do the same level of work in 2 different classes and end up with 2 very different grades. And that's a system that we need to change. Because as Joe Feldman said in the book Grading for Equity, which is one that we did a pretty deep dive book study on, he said at the end of the day, it is their grades, which is our description of students' academic performance, that opens and closes doors for them. So the different grading systems in different classes can open and shut doors. So Isabel's 76%, when her assessments are at 95%, might be closing doors to acceleration, right? Might be closing doors to college. And just as damaging is Tangela's 76% when she was only scoring 60% on assessments, closes doors to her, to people recognizing that she's struggling and providing the interventions that she needs so that she can move forward and help her to meet standard. So these inequitable systems and inconsistent systems can be closing doors for students at both ends.
So as you can see from the data, our initiative is deeply connected to 2 other initiatives. B1A, establish clear and vertically aligned instructional models that embed culturally responsive instructional practices. And C1A, identify and remove barriers to authentic learning and high expectations for our diverse learners. Grading and assessment practices are integral to instructional practices, and you do not have effective grading and assessment or instructional practices if you do not remove the barriers to learning for our diverse students. Work has been done in the past around standards-based grading and effective assessment strategies, and we have made inroads. Some teachers have adopted practices that we are identifying as key elements in a model that we should all be using. It has not been a systemic change though, and up to this point, it hasn't been consistent. That's the power of strategic planning, a chance for us to make more systemic changes. So to ensure effective implementation, our team spent this school year on foundational tasks. We studied research-based books, including Grading for Equity and Formative and Assessment and Standards-Based Grading, to inform the development of our draft belief, purpose, and practice statements. Professional learning continued in equitable grading practices and assessment item analysis to inform instruction in schools, particularly those schools that showed a readiness to benefit and an interest in learning, which has helped our team immensely as we have worked to start formulating models. We developed definitions of effective grading assessment practices as well as belief and purpose statements, and those statements are being presented for feedback in a variety of venues. For example, the elementary grade report team, the building and district administrators have given initial feedback, and other groups will be engaged before they are finalized. You will have the opportunity to share your feedback as well today. And I believe Dr. Woods will be sharing some examples with you. If you could move the slide forward. While she does that, I'll just say that this slide really represents the books that we studied, artifacts of the professional learning that we did both on our team, in content area teams and in schools, just represents the work.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. So we, as our team, and we worked diligently on this over several meetings to look at statements of purpose, belief, and practices that come from those beliefs around assessment and grading. So on the screen, I'm showing the purposes of assessment. And we talked about that earlier, providing feedback so that the students will monitor their learning, develop their knowledge and skills, and also provide both cohort-based and individual learning insights so that educators can adjust their practices, both in the moment and long term. The purpose of grading, as we've talked about, is to communicate students' progress towards mastery of identified course standards in a fair, equitable, informative, and clear manner, so that students don't have to use their cognitive energy figuring out the system or playing the game, but they can really use it on learning and creating and growing. So those are the purposes that we have drafted. And then we've also drafted belief statements. I know you have them in front of you, but I also wanted to show you the belief statements kind of side by side here, because even though these beliefs are, assessment and grading are really different practices, they're very closely intertwined. And as Dr. Matthews says, have to be part of a well-designed instructional plan. So finally, what we'd like you to do right now is just take a few minutes to review this two-sided document that I just handed you. It is our draft statement. We'd like you to take a few minutes to look at it and underline any parts of it that really resonate with you. Like you're like, yes, this is the purpose of grading, or yes, I believe this is a best practice in assessment. And then I want you to mark a W or a question mark by things that you're wondering about. So underline things that resonate with you and make a W by things that you're wondering. We're going to give you a few minutes to do this, and then we're going to ask for your comments, just a couple of comments from each of you. Give you maybe another 30 seconds or so. I know it's probably not enough time to dive into it really deeply. A couple more moments here, and then I'll just ask for a couple of comments from each of you about maybe one thing that resonates with you and one thing you're wondering about. Does anyone want to start?
So if I'm breaking this down to like a Barney level, like the most basic plain words I can use. Essentially, what we're looking at is going from a kind of one and done assessment model where you take the test, you get your score, and that's it. That's the only chance you have to demonstrate your learning. And what we're really trying to move towards is consistent assessment towards learning and measuring that, right?
Yes.
Is that what I'm getting?
That's a really lovely summary of making sure students have multiple opportunities to demonstrate their learning along the way.
And so twice we use, this phrase, communicate grades in a way that positively shape the students' perceptions of themselves. I'm wondering if that should be accurately shape the students' perceptions of themselves as learners. Because, we want students to have positive regards for themselves, but they also should not have rose-colored glasses about it. If they need to work on a certain area, that's fine. That is okay. That's what you're here for, is to work on, learn. But knowing where my challenges still lie, so that I can improve them, I think might be a more appropriate way of lensing that.
Thank you for that. And I think making sure that when we're accurately describing it, we're also making sure that we're communicating that growth mindset that we know that they're going to get there, right?
Yeah, in an empathetic fashion.
Yeah. Thank you, I appreciate that.
I looked at a wondering area. The area that I looked at was most consistent evidence of learning to determine summative scores and course grades, rather than averaging or accumulation of points. My wondering around that would be, will it be with fidelity across the system? So that we start looking at, if I were a student A that was in region 1, and then for some reason in a class, any class, class B, and for some reason I had to move to region 2 in that same class in school C, same course, and I understand the dynamics because the students may be different, so there may be dynamics difference, and there may be dynamics as far as a different teacher may add to the course differently. But the basics for the assessments and the grading and the weighted values provided should give me at least the same grade.
Yes.
So would it would give me the same grade? So the fidelity question is, how would it come to that?
That is what Dr. Matthews was talking about. We've made some changes in pockets and really talking about systemic change across the board, and why this initiative can't really be separated from the initiative of instructional frameworks that are consistent across our system as well as responsive to our student needs. But yes, it needs to be across our system, and that's why you're seeing us build this foundational knowledge first, because we need to be implementing this systemically.
Is that one of the reasons why, when we start talking about expected completion dates and we see the date June 24th, 2024?
Right, there's, yes, so when you see an expected completion date of June 2024, it means we need to make sure that we are pacing this in a way that our system is that it's going to be sustainable change. I don't know, Catherine, if you want to add something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if we look at the work of the next phase, the intention there is deep learning on our part so that we can facilitate deep learning among all the stakeholders. So parents, students, staff, administrators, because that's where we're going to have the meaningful, substantive implementation that really sticks.
Anybody else want to share anything things that resonate or things you're wondering about this document.
I have a wondering, I guess, I mean, this is a big, big lift when I look at the complexity of it. And I guess I'm sort of wondering in a broader scheme of who takes ownership of this, in terms of, ensuring that, across our district, all algebra courses have the same weighting and that the teachers are using the same assessments because as a parent, I had a large spectrum of different scenarios. And it was frustrating when I had two children take the same topic, different teachers, completely different kind of grading scales. And it just, kind of made me wonder, like, okay, which one's right, But also have a student do very well in a class, and because my kids tended to take AP classes, there was a standardized test at the end, and some teachers did, as we all know, an amazing job of getting those kids, to pass and get the credit for those AP exams, and then there were teachers that fell far short. And how can a student over here get an A, and yet they're not able to attain, the end goal of maybe getting that credit on that AP, and who takes ownership of that?
That's a great question. We all need to take ownership of it, all of us, and that's, I think, as Bonnie said earlier, that's why this is strategic. And I think when we worked on grading practices, for example, in isolation, and we've been working on it, but it hasn't been with this really systemic approach, we've had pockets of excellence, and we need to make sure that goes across. And I think our next slide is about next steps, I think, and so I think maybe you'll kind of see where those things are.
To your point, I think, and staff could chime in too, you're getting everybody at the table, just getting everybody at the table, teachers, administrators, staff to say, okay, look what happened in this classroom to two different students. How do we get better at this, or what are we missing? What do you guys see as teachers? And then really having these discussions. That's why I think 2024, you have to have it out in 2024. But I think that's what Kathy and Catherine are sharing with you today. As we continue to move the system and move our strategic plan and being innovative, it's getting the teachers to the table. We're doing it now, right, Larry, with the middle school scheduling. It's really just making that heavy change, but it's not really heavy changes. If people are at the table, it becomes a lot easier.
So looking through this, I underlined the word communication, or communicate a lot of time, which is really good, because it was a lot of communication, a lot of, positive language. And I think the upside is that it seems like we're trying to move away from teaching to the test. Like we're trying to teach for mastery, which is good, but it's also diametrically opposed to what Director Mason put out there, because those teachers in AP, if they don't teach to the test, then
But the test is the standards, don't forget.
It is.
So I know what you're saying.
But they have to pass that test. I mean, however they get there, and yes, it's the standard, but I know a lot of folks who love AP, they do well in AP, but they just don't pass, or they get a 2 or a 3 on the test. And so I guess my wondering in all that is, how do we go to this assessment-based process, which I think is really good, it's healthy. Even just I underline variety of assessment modalities, teacher-student relationships. I mean, on both sides you have relationships there, and that's really important. But again, at the end of the day, for the parents, at least the ones that I talk to, they want their kid to get a 4 or 5 on that AP test. They don't care about the teacher relationship. They don't care about how good folks do. If my kid took that class, they better darn well get the credit. So I guess how my wondering is, how are we gonna put our emphasis on AP, and then now say we're gonna do kind of this really, I'll say a touchy-feely approach to assessment, but the College Board wants your 120 and your X amount of hours, and it better be done in May, even though some schools start teaching to it way earlier than we do, because they start, in Florida, that was a great example, they start teaching their kids way earlier than we do for the test, so we're already in a deficit by 20 to 30 hours, and now we're going to teach to assessment. So I'm just wondering, how does that all fit together?
I think a part of it is really making sure that our assessments are truly aligned to the standards of the course. So all the assessments along the way. And all of those assessments along the way, they're maybe very formative assessments, and so maybe they're not part of the grade, but they are informing our instruction. And so, in it, calling out the relationship, I appreciate that, because the students, if that relationship, if the grade doesn't seem fair or equitable or all those things, that's a negative relationship between the student and the teacher. And they're going to play the game or stop playing the game or all of those kinds of things. But I think the standards, whether it's in an AP class or a different, a college and a high school class, or an intro to art class, the assessment should be aligned to the standards all along the way. And so it is, as you say, it's not an easy shift. It's not an easy shift, but with all the people at the table, we believe that we can make a really big difference with this. And that is why the 2024. Catherine, I have the slide up on the next steps.
Yep. So this is a multi-year project. And so in the coming year, we will engage in this next phase of work, which includes identifying and engaging internal stakeholder groups in the work plan, developing final grading and assessment statements of belief, purpose, and practice with people's input, developing P12 assessment and grading models based on best practices and culturally responsive pedagogies, engaging stakeholders, including administrators, teachers, families, and students collaboratively in professional learning around grading and assessment, initial implementation practices, and then developing a system-wide implementation plan. Examining current policies and procedures and practices that may not be aligned to those belief statements or the models that we want to put in place, and determining what needs to be changed, added, or stopped. I think it's important to remember that, guided by the research around change management, we've already spent a lot of time learning as a leadership team, and our next phase is really about guiding the learning across the system so that when we implement and ultimately monitor and continue to strengthen our work, it will be a meaningful change for our students. And with that, just ask if you have any questions for clarification or reflections or observations for our team.
I have a question. When you work across the system and it is not directed in any one particular school or one department, how do you elect the teams that will be doing the work across the systems? Will it be based on students, teachers, family members in each one of the regions of the system, per se? So it isn't.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. My inability to see you clearly is hampering our communication, and I apologize for interrupting. But I will say that, in the first phase of developing the models, we obviously want to cross-section across grade levels and types of courses and schools. But when it comes to actual implementation, and our district has great experience implementing district-wide major changes, the teacher principal evaluation program, TPEP, the instructional technology across the district. We have systems in place that are great models for making sure everyone has the chance for professional learning so that they can implement in the best way possible.
I would just like to add that one of the things that we've been doing pretty consistently in the academics department is when we do our adoption process. So for example, the mathematics adoption, we have common assessments that are embedded within that curriculum, and that's actually a great way to start some of this work, which is we are utilizing a common assessment so that even if a teacher uses their academic freedom and differentiated instructional strategies within that classroom, the assessment stays the same. So students need to be assessed on the standard with a common assessment tool. That's actually helping us to facilitate these conversations around what do we expect students to learn in this particular unit, and we work backwards through that planning process of this is the goal, how do we do those pieces, and then we collect that information. So as we roll out curricula and as we help to coordinate and align our instructional maps, the expectation is that teachers are utilizing those instructional maps as their guideposts of this is what we want kids to learn, this is how we assess whether or not a student is successful in mastering the standard, and then we can have some better conversations around what does it mean to be successful in this classroom. So that's one of the things that we're doing that's helping.
Any other final thoughts, questions, or reflections on this before we turn it over to your next exciting?
I would just say on behalf of all parents, thank you. This is, like I said, it's a big lift, but I'm so glad that we're having this conversation and looking at this, because I really do think it's going to have a huge impact.
Thank you.
And that was a mic drop.
She's done. I'm going to turn it over to Brian Beckley at this point.
Drop the mic. Drop the mic.
Well, that is quite an entrance, Kathy. Dr. Woods, thank you very much. So I'm excited, President was saying, directors, Dr. Saltzman, community, I'm excited to be here tonight to share with you the interactive flat panel demonstration, give you, we call it exploring interactive flat panels. I'm going to actually use the flat panel for the presentation, and what the presentation is going to be is a few minutes of me giving some background and details, and then more giving you an opportunity to, we couldn't bring all the teachers and the students here to talk about it, but we did a little filming to see the kids using it and a few teachers to talk about its impact to their teaching and learning. So we'll have that as well as part of this. Joining me is Tessa O'Connor. She's at the back there. She's one of our LMS directors, and she's a lead in connecting with our elementary teachers on the PD session. So she's going to join me in support of you. So a little bit of background. This is a 2016 capital levy project, and it was, the levy project was around replacing projectors in the elementary classrooms. The secondary classrooms are part of the 2022 levy that the community passed, so that's great news. The 2016 levy was to replace elementary projectors. What we discovered as we did the assessment of the needs, every building a little bit different, every configuration a little bit different, is just a simple projector replacement. Technology had sort of advanced beyond this being the replacement. And so the scope and the what it would be changed dramatically from when we wrote the levy, but it was connected to that life cycle management with, which is the replacement of the levies. They were starting to break, they were starting to age out. So the process is really a three-step process. It really started with assessing what our current classroom needs were. And you see here a teacher team we brought together to kind of look at some of the different examples of what projection could look like. We vetted different options. Met with Dr. Saltzman and kind of showed our recommendation of moving towards the flat panel. Clearly the priority and the support was, this sounds great, let's get it in front of teachers and the students as soon as possible. So that brought us into the delivery and the professional development. This was also a priority for Dr. Saltzman. Make sure they know how to use it, not just put it in the classroom. And so both of those were big, important factors in these phases. And in each of these steps, we partnered with our principals about what works for your staff, what's the best way they learn, what's the process for how we can get this information and get it delivered to them. So our choice was the box light. That's what you see pictured or in front of you, along with some panels in the room. This solution went beyond just simple projection. It was greater mobility for teachers during instruction, but also increased engagement and interactivity for students rather than just simple projection. And the teachers liked the ability that it was on a stand and they could adjust it based on the activity and the age level. So it wasn't fastened to the wall, and they liked that feature as well. On the mobility factor, if you think of the teacher's classroom, and this is the panel, you can see there's multiple ways to connect to the panel. This is a dotted line, which could be a wire or it could be wireless. The teachers can project from their laptop. They can hook straight up to the laptop. The flat panel is the computer itself, so it can connect to a browser. It can be its own computer. It has its own built-in apps, but it can also connect to the Nano, which is the teacher's desktop. It's called a Nano. They also have the laptop, but it also has the ability for teachers or students to project from their computers. So a student can be doing work, and they can share with the panel, and they can share their work with their class. And it's multi-directional. The laptop can dictate what's on the panel, but the panel can also dictate what's on the laptop. It goes back and forth. So the engagement and interactivity, as I said, is a standalone device. It is expanded in what it can do because it allows devices to connect to it. It also allows dot cameras to wirelessly stream. You see two examples of here are where a teacher is wirelessly casting their document camera to the front of the classroom or wherever their panel is in the room for teachers or students to interact with it. It's 20 points of touch, which means you can have multiple students at the panel at the same time, which supports interactivity. And it utilizes link software, which the teachers really love. Like, for example, one of the things teachers use this for is the morning routine. It takes what would be something maybe the teacher would do on white paper, but you could have, what's the date today, students? And they could move this, a student could come up and move this. So yesterday, Johnny, what was yesterday? Well, yesterday was Monday, today is Tuesday. What's the weather today? And somebody could, do that over there. And so it's more interactive for them to do that morning routine time. Another example of link software, this is in the science unit and I'm showing you actual things we designed in partnership with teachers and understanding the different systems of the human body. So here's the muscular system. Well, what's behind the muscular system? Well, here's the skeletal system. And so well, students, I wonder what's behind it. You can take and you can minimize this by just making it more transparent. I wonder what's behind the skeletal system and what does that look like as a way of a visual for students as well. One thing I'd like to share is this was designed by a teacher trying to teach how a bill gets voted into law. And so he did some learning around, some background learning with the students, and then he was like, okay, so here's the bill. So let's say there was a vote, it was 217 people voted yes. What happens to the bill? Does it go to committee? Does it rest in peace? And so the students can come up and they can interact with it and they can move it around. He taught this lesson on how to sign a bill into law. What took just a little bit of time had taken him weeks previous to the design of the link software. So the PD part of this is we understand that teachers learn on a trajectory. And so in the delivery, the teachers got the panel. What we learned in one-to-one training was teachers, it's more real to them when it's in front of them. So that first day of delivery, when it's delivered in the classroom, they get initial use training, how to use the device, how to project, how to kind of that initial, but the longer they have it, the more they incorporate into independent use. And so you can see how we designed the initial training from the immediate use all the way through. There are multiple sessions. And this was feedback from the principals about don't just come in and give us lots of information. Let them have it over time and let's design that support. And so you can see that trajectory is how we designed it. And our ongoing training is really a menu of options in the short term for the next school year and going forward. You'll notice we always will have basics. We're adding new teachers. We have guest teachers we're constantly training. I thought it was great in the Seattle Times article that Dr. Saltzman shared today. It showed a guest teacher using a flat panel at Penny Creek. I thought that was yay. But you can see there's a menu of different options based on where people are at in their learning trajectory that we'll continue to offer moving forward. Again, I couldn't bring all the students and teachers here. I wanted to make sure you had a little bit of time to hear from them. And so you'll see a little bit about how students use it. there's not sound here at the beginning, but you can see how's your day starting. Kids come in, they rate their day. Sometimes they just have them come up and draw. You'll also see the next is
And circling.
she's
Oh, I'm
wirelessly
so
casting her back camera.
That is so awesome. I'm gonna choose a friend. Somebody who hasn't been chosen yet. All right, Julian. Hey, Ginger, how are you? Just make sure you wear it. No. Oh, my goodness. Why is Julian circling the arrow? Raise your hand if you know why. Alexi, why is he circling the arrow? Why? That's for you. What's it telling us? Up. It's telling us up. Show me on your fingers, how many times?
So this is presented 2-digit numbers in pictures and in words.
And then show me on your fingers, how many ones do you think he's gonna put up? 4, count, how many?
So he comes up and displays it in pictures, and then another student's gonna come up.
Okay. Now,
You can see how she's lowered the panel, because they're down in carpet time, so she's put it at its lowest setting.
Everett classroom?
I don't know, we'll look at that one another time. Oh, interesting. Take turns, so one at a time. Oh, June's doing it.
Yes, these are in all of our preschool and 5th grade classrooms currently.
5th grade.
This is the end of science unit test assessment on, this was dragging the words to the test. So you can see how these two students are, she is actually helping him a little bit at this, so the teacher is still part of that. I was very excited about getting her.
Oh, that's awesome. Those are very happy. Good job.
Now we'll hear from the teachers.
First and foremost, they do all kinds of interactive lessons with me on the board. So I call them up when we're doing math lessons, doing writing. They come up and they circle their sight words. They're doing some of their 10 frames in math, and we're doing some of the stations, and we use that board every single day for that learning. So they're back and forth and up and down, taking turns. They also love to use it for plan and reflect. But the kids do come up and they share, and they do that more because they can see it up here. And it's big, as opposed to seeing it here in the smaller space. I was a chicken. I mean, to be honest, I didn't know what this was going to be. It just takes up a lot of real estate, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to be engaged with it for me. But it has really changed my whole attitude about how this interacts with the kids and how this has become an engaging process in my learning for me and also for the kids. And I've appreciated that so much.
My favorite thing I've been enjoying is this notepad feature, really. I've been loving this, especially for like math talks. As we're going through a choral count, write it down, and then we can come back and we can color code and pick. I also have been just enjoying it for whenever we're doing any sort of reading or that we're working with story-wise, you know, the spotlight feature is super cool for like, okay, let's take a look at the word moon. What do you know about moon? Let's talk about it. What's another, you know. So spotlight's huge. I also like that I can just at any time have a kid come up and say, what's a word you don't know? And they'll come up and they'll circle it and we can talk about it as a class.
It was fantastic. I loved this. To be able to have the kids practice in color, and it's living color, as opposed to the white sheet that they have, to be able to practice with the color and put them in the right habitat is going to be such a great thing for the kids. And it's easy to manipulate. I love this, and we just know that that fish lives in water. That's the best thing.
I love links. It's been really great also to be able to use it to create things on my computer, and then that is transferred over here. And it's so great too because I can choose what I want to be edited by the kids and what I don't want to be edited by the kids.
You can screenshot students' work under the document camera, so like their math notebooks, their writing responses for reading or whatnot. You can screenshot it, pull it up. It can be anonymous or not, and then you can have students like dissect it and really break it down and look at what someone else's work or multiple examples, comparing differences. So just the ability to screenshot someone's work, pull it up here, and then mark it up, but not literally mark it up, right? They can virtually mark it up and really have a discussion about it. That's been pretty powerful, getting a lot of that student learning. I've really enjoyed that.
Having them come up here and pair together, particularly those who don't understand necessarily the concepts or are ready for those concepts, and to pair them with somebody who is ready, taking turns and having those conversations about where these guys go is going to be great.
So that gives you a little bit of a sense from our teachers and students getting a chance to see it in action. And so we want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to have some hands-on experience. You got a chance to see it, and now you want to make sure you have a chance to experience it. That's really the most important factor of our presentation. So that's what we'll have you get up, and that's what the panels are for over here. And so maybe Tessa, you can talk a little bit about that.
So the way we have it set up, and you can do pretty much anything, thank you. Brian's going to be at these two panels, and we have some links and slides built that we've worked on with teachers that you can look at and interact with. And then I'll be at those front two panels, and I'll open up Note and some of the other activities that you can just do as a standalone on the panel. If you want, I have a little handout that can guide you through an activity with those, but I'll be right there to help as well.
Okay, class.
I hope they kept it to that exercise where the habitat is.
We have a.
Oh, good. Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is my This is the Al Roker moment.
Right.
It's going to be sunny today, but rain in the afternoon and clouds by night.
There you go.
He said, sure.
Yeah, and it's a replicate feature, so it stays there.
And hopefully no snow by nightfall.
And you can advance to the next level, so you can just hit this. Oh my God. You can just, yeah, kind of go through. Yeah, well then you.
What if I went tomorrow? She probably
So how does the nervous system show you? It didn't change anything. It didn't change anything. Oh, there it is.
It's gonna be sunny every single day.
And so there's a feature I talked about.
Oh my gosh. This is what they always do. They put the sun ball on and then they put a bunch of clouds over it.
So you want to go. You catch this, and then you
And the flags in the water.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing that happened
Jeffrey?
This is the signature one. That's what
I know. That's the bill, maybe you might
These are the student names.
Oh, thank you, Jared.
Because I was the one class, they were looking at IT, and then they were making words on it, you know, and I said, this is pretty cool. Now, this is like the one where you saw where they were doing that, and it was all
So this is interesting because the way that they do it is, like I was thinking this. So,
I'm like that. And then you can go back. All right, so directors, let's head back to our seats. Hopefully that gave you a little taste. This just gives you a little taste, and there's a lot this panel can do. And the teachers, as you can hear and see, are really excited about its use in the classroom. I did want to mention that the next phase of this project is our secondary classrooms. And we're already working on our project team sort of transitioning to the secondary plan. It is part of the 2022 capital levy. It's the first project on our project list. So it's a priority for for us to have this for our secondary teachers. They might not use the link software, but Boxlight does have software that is specific. There's kind of got more of a secondary feel to it. I also will mention that Boxlight has an in-house trainer that stays with us for a year. Her name is Erica, and she's been a great resource in helping teachers design and get comfortable with this professional learning. We would get something similar from Boxlight for secondary. So we're really excited, really thankful to our community for supporting the 2016 levy and supporting the board and Dr. Saltzman in bringing this into our classrooms. It's been great for kids and for our teachers. So if there are any questions.
This was all on the 2016 levy.
Right. Well, it was just a simple projector replacement. So we couldn't have imagined in 2015 that the panel would be what we would do in 2022. But that was clear that technology had advanced beyond just replacing projectors.
That's what happens with 6-year technology levies.
Exactly. And my question is, how much of that funding have we utilized right now just to cover elementary school? And how much more will we need for secondary schools?
Well, it's in the 2022 levy, and so we built it in with knowing what we know from the 2016 levy. So it was already kind of factored in its design for cost.
Okay.
In the 2016 levy, because it was beyond that, we're kind of spending into the last part of the levy to fully fund this, and we were able to use some bond money as well, especially on the infrastructure design portion of it. So we've already allocated that for the 2022 levy for secondary, which has about the same number of classrooms as elementary. When we did an assessment, it's got about the same 600 classrooms or so. So cost-wise, it will be pretty similar. But we're excited for this.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you for your engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. While we are still recording, I omitted one point in time for our executive closed session. We anticipated a length of 20 minutes, but we ended up using 40 minutes. No action was taken during that executive session. An executive session was used to discuss litigation or potential litigation with legal counsel, and that's one of the reasons in which we held that executive session. Dr. Saltzman, are there any other items that need to come before?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, it's been a wonderful, wonderful presentation. I truly enjoyed it. Thank you so very much for presenters. Did an awesome job. And then the follow-up with actually touching the screen, it's wonderful. Thank you. And directors, are there any other comments? So this will conclude the business schedule to come before this meeting. This meeting is now adjourned.